corner store smells like Pall Malls. The cashier wears the same overalls. The cops wash the blood off their hands with the moonshine they took from the moonlight. Dirty South. Hey, 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 yeah. Dirty South. In the dirty South, dirty South.
All right, everybody. I hope that you are doing well. And all I can say is that the testimony today by Alec Murdaugh was insane. It was crazy. You know, first of all, let me get my sound right. First of all, I've got to admit, I had speculated, I had wondered, I actually more than wondered, I really felt like it was a good possibility that he would take the stand. Now, the night before all this happened, this week, I guess, leading up to this, people, the talking heads on television and YouTube, the professionals that do YouTube, all of the legal eagles pretty much said this, he's not going to take the stand. And if he does take the stand, it is against his attorney's advice. I mean, they all said it. I didn't see a single attorney, a YouTube, commentator. I didn't see a single person in the know that law enforcement or the court, that they were saying, oh yeah, he should definitely take the stand. They all said it. They all said if he does it, it's against legal advice. And I've heard people say, well, he's so arrogant. Correct? So many people have said that him taking the stand is evidence of his level of arrogance. And so that's what we're seeing as he gets up on the stand and does his thing. Well, I'm going to do, y'all, those of you that are regulars, in my channel, in our community, y'all know that I always do try to add a little something to think about that maybe is not really being discussed on some of the other channels. Because the Lord knows there's 10 million true crime channels now that you can get information from. I mean, there's all kinds of people that are, doing the true crime. And so I always kind of like to add a little bit of my professional information and knowledge. I'm a clinical psychologist in my real world. And so I always try to add a little tiny bit of something different from which to view some of these cases that we talk about. And those that as they speculated about whether or not Alec Murdaugh would take the stand, they all said, well, if he does this, it's going to be against his attorney's advice and basically just law 101 in general, right? I mean, the rule is you don't have to prove your innocence. In fact, it's just about damn near impossible to prove innocence. Your job is to wait and see if prosecution can prove your guilt. And honestly, as horrific as this whole case has been, and the terrible problem of the timeline, the never-ending, non-stop whirlwind of lies that passed through the lips of Alec Murdaugh, the prosecution failed on some points. I am convinced that they have the right guy. But I think in the end, there was a bit of disappointment about how the prosecution handled their case. For, for one thing, it just seemed like it was a never-ending, nonstop, same problem we saw with O.J. Simpson kind of thing. It was just, I think that Juan Martinez with the Jodi Arias prosecution, I think that Juan Martinez could get away with the long, never-ending courtroom battle because he had such personality, because he had such that thing, charisma, that thing you can't quite put your finger on. You can't train for it. You can't develop it. It's something people either have or they don't. And Juan Martinez had that, and so the nation was entertained for weeks on end as he and Jodi sparred, on the stand. But this prosecutor doesn't have that. When he tries, some people experience him as a bit offensive. There is that charm, that undertone of charm is just not there, and he comes off sometimes looking like he's bullying, and that can really turn some people off on not knowingly, but just kind of these undertones. And so as I'm looking at all this, and people are saying, "Oh, he's so arrogant. That's the reason that he took the stand." He believes that he knows more than his attorneys, and he does have two remarkable attorneys, with a colorful, successful history. But that this was evidence that he knows more than anybody else, and so he's not going to take advice and that kind of thing. And I have a little bit of a different take on that. One thing that comes to mind as I'm watching, and I'm going to go through his testimony right now. I know you guys have seen it, 10 million fold at this point, but I want to go through it and comment on it because I find it incredibly interesting. I think he is a curious, interesting fellow. We got a lot to talk about with Alec Murdaugh. Same thing with his son, Buster. But Buster, I was a bit more hands off. Be careful, He's definitely a victim in this thing, even as other people have suggested that he may have been there or worse. But without a doubt, he's lost the most in this whole debacle. But for Alec, it came to mind as I'm sitting and watching this and just shaking my head, thinking, "Wow, who could make this up?" The one thing that kept popping through my head is Gardner's 8 intelligences. This theory of multiple intelligences, and so this theory of multiple intelligence, it was actually first really consumed in a 1983 book. It was called Frames of Mind, the Theory of Multiple Intelligences. And Gardner talks about that there's not one overriding general IQ, but that people have various domains of functioning in which that particular IQ is expressed. And I've kind of touched on that before when we have talked about different things, and that is, what is the actual definition of intellectual ability or IQ? And it's a two-part definition, and most people don't look at it as that. Most people look at the construct as being a simple single construct of, well, how smart are you? Like, what are your innate natural abilities? Right? But in truth, that doesn't mean anything. I can develop the most amazing, aesthetically pleasing, wonderful light bulb. Right? Could be great, the greatest light bulb of all time, and without a plug-in, a source of electricity, it's just a sculpture. It has no utility. It can't do anything. So when you think about IQ, you have to consider what are the innate abilities, but also what is the environment in which it is being expressed. What is the person naturally capable of doing, and are they effective in the environment that they're in? If I go into a classroom, I'm well equipped to do what I need to do in a classroom. I'm smart, book smart. I can do the work. It's easy. It doesn't take a lot for me to be accomplished. But if you drop me into the middle of the Amazonian rainforest, guess what? I just got really dumb. So it matters when you consider how smart someone is. It matters not only what their ability is, but also what is the environment in which they're operating. With Gardner, though, he took just a little bit. He took just a little bit of a different view of this to try to capture this phenomenon of the environment is going to really highlight whether you are intellectually competent or not in any given environment. He basically kind of he believes that people are like have a range of abilities, and that in order to capture to fully understand a person and how they're going to succeed, be able to predict the likelihood of success in whatever they do, you have to consider the individual components of this full range of talents. And so there was a ninth variable, a ninth type of intelligence, but the 8 intelligences were like musical intelligence, spatial visual intelligence, linguistic intelligence, logical mathematical intelligence, naturalistic intelligence, intrapersonal, and then interpersonal. And that's why this kept going through my mind as I'm watching Alec Murdaugh on the stand. Right? I don't really care about, of course, the body kinesthetic also popped into my head watching him. He's a mountain of a human being. He's a big guy, 6'4", quite lanky and lean at this point in his life. But one of the things we learned of him being on the stand today is that he actually was a college football player. And I thought that was very interesting. So watching him enter the room, watching the awareness that he has, the way he moves his body and positions his body in relation, well, he had the limitation that his damn legs are too long, and so I think his knees were probably not, he was not really able to fit well into the way they had the witness stand set up. And so if you notice when he first gets up on stand, he kind of turns almost like he's sitting in the back seat of a car. He turns his knees, and this is so important. And here's why. Because he's now turned and opened himself up to the jury. I thought about that, and I kept thinking, I said, would I have done that? Would I have gone and sat down? Would my natural inclinations have been to sit down and not have enough room for my legs? Would I have turned my knees and my shoulders sort of toward the judge, toward the center of the courtroom, towards my attorneys, because those are the people that I know, toward my family members, because those are the people that make me feel safe? Or would I have squeezed into that tiny box and turned towards the jury. And those are the people that have my life in their hands. Those are the people who are going to make a decision whether I ever go home or not. So I don't particularly like those people. I'm afraid of them. They're dangerous to me. And so let me see if I've got my let me share this. Hold on. Good morning, everybody coming in. So let's watch him come in and how he positions himself. I'm going to get back to Gardner's 8 intelligences. Just stick with me, but I want to stay with this idea because there are 8, technically 9, but 8 of specific intelligences that Gardner outlines, and one of them is this spatial awareness, like this understanding where your body is at any point in time, and that matters. That has power. Nonverbals are they're very powerful modes of communication, and most of us do not make good use of them. But let's watch and see what this joker does. If it'll start. I don't think they have the sound on in the courtroom just yet. They're waiting to talk about, I also saw, I'm going to go ahead and comment on this too very quickly. This guy, Condon, this man in the front here, he's a legal powerhouse. He's a political bigwig for the state of South Carolina. I have come to learn. And those of you that messaged me, thank you for removing my ignorance. I am very appreciative. I saw an interesting event toward the end of Alec Murdaugh's testimony before lunch break today. Or no, maybe it was at the end of the day. And I'm going to point it out to you. And then he is seen with Alec outside the building after testimony. So it's quite. I am very interested. I'll point that out later though. I keep having that song, Dirty South. And there's old Buster, Prince Buster here, firstborn, heir to the throne. And if you have not seen this testimony, I can't imagine anyone interested in true crime has not yet seen it. But if you have not seen it, it was emotionally just devastating. Really, really, really devastating. You could just about hear a gasp.
If your business kept on employees through the pandemic, Innovation Refunds can see if it may qualify for a payroll tax refund of up to $26,000.
That Alec would be testifying today. I'm fast forwarding through all of this. I wish I knew what they were waiting on so intently. Love this judge. Love this judge. This judge does not get in the weeds, does he? He doesn't allow himself to be manipulated by these mental giants.
Jury is present.
Thank you.
And this drama is taking place in Walterboro, South Carolina. The Low
Ma'am, you will not
Country,
be able to sit.
an area notorious
Cannot sit there.
for drug
You
traffickers.
cannot sit in the jury box.
I've seen more YouTube channels making the case that there had been multi-generational connections to organized crime with this family.
You may call your next
Mostly-
witness.
Listen.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defendant, Richard Alexander Murdaugh, wishes to take the stand.
Look at everybody. Look at them. Look at the people. They were like, what the hell?
Watch yourself. Yes, ma'am. You'll place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now watch
You'll have a seat on the witness stand.
Watch how what he chooses to do with his body, his awareness for what he's going to do.
If you don't mind stating your full name again and spelling your last name.
I'm Alec Murdaugh, Murdaugh. Good morning.
Now he pulls his chair close to, so his knees are going to be against the wall. It sort of gives you this impression that, well, you know, gosh, I don't want to manipulate you and openly, you know, remember how awkward Jodi Arias was, that they would ask her a question and she would like swivel toward the jury and answer the question. It was so awkward and it was so uncomfortable, you know? And then she'd swivel back toward her attorney, and then to answer the question, she'd turn back toward. So it just was very ineffective. It just was it looked like it was calculated and it was manipulative. Old Alec here, gosh darn it. Hey y'all. Hey. Y'all, yeah, I'm going to keep my head ducked just a little bit here. Not going to make eye contact with you right now because I don't want you to think that I'm manipulating you. I just want you to get comfortable with me. I'm a nice guy. I'm a good guy. I'm a family man. I work hard for my community. And I'm just been misunderstood. I've been misunderstood, and it's even worse than that, y'all. They have lied about me. Those people at that prosecution table, they have lied about me. And I have suffered. Lord knows I have suffered. I've also had some terrific losses, real losses not of my making. And I'm here today to tell you my story. You guys are wonderful people. Y'all are wonderful to give your time. And I'm here to help you understand where this evil this prosecution has lied on me. And they lied on my boy Buster. And they told terrible lies about Paul. None of those people knew my boy, and he was the most wonderful person. I was married to an angel of a woman, but I am not going to look up at you just yet. I'm just going to get comfortable, make myself look a little awkward, look a little frightened, a little scared. But more important, I'm going to open myself up to you so that if you wish to stick a spear in my heart, I will allow that. I am no threat to you. I am one of you, and we are in this together. That's what he said in those few calculated moments. The positioning of his body, not in a very overt kind of, I am the professor and you will pay attention to me and make me center stage, like what you'd expect to see with a narcissist. No. Watch him. He scoots up. It's like watching a little boy. He puts himself into a physical position that he looks awkward and uncomfortable and scared. And he doesn't like zone in on him, looking him in the eye like Jodi Arias did, which was so crazy. But he sort of just, looks kind of like the old, don't make eye contact with, like old Japanese, just bowing your head, eyes downcast, showing honor, showing dignity, and respect. And so he just sort of keeps his head down a little bit as he's positioning his body, and it makes it look like, well, gosh darn, I just don't fit here. I just don't quite fit here. I got to figure out how I need to sit. Okay, so and this was the moment I was like, damn, Alec, yeah, wow, I can't believe that what I'm seeing here. And then that as I listened to him, that is how this whole Gardner's 8 intelligences popped into my head. So the there's visual, spatial. I'm not going to go through and do this whole lesson on Gardner's 8 intelligences. I'm going to point out the ones that are, I think operative here. So the first one is visual spatial intelligence. These are people that are very good at visualizing things. They work very well with maps, charts, videos, and pictures. They recognize patterns easily, and generally their career choices are things like architect or engineer or artist. That's not really operative here. There's linguistic verbal intelligence, which is incredibly important in Alec Murdaugh's testimony. And people that are strong in linguistic verbal intelligence are masterful at the use of words, both speaking and writing. They can develop very good stories. They are quite gifted at memorizing information or simply recalling either things they've read or things that they've said or things that other people have said. They're masterful at this. High level of linguistic verbal intelligence results in a person that is very capable in responding effectively to a novel, unique social situation. They're the people that can think and problem solve on the fly, quickly. So let's take a minute and listen to Alec talk.
Mr. Murdaugh, on June 7th, 2021, did you take this gun or any gun like it and shoot your son Paul in the chest in the feed room at your property off Moselle?
No, I did not.
Mr. Murdaugh, did you take this gun or any gun like it and blow your son's brains out on June 7th or any day or any time?
No, I did not.
Mr. Murdaugh, did you take a 300 blackout, such as this, and fire it into your wife Maggie's leg, torso, or any part of her body?
No, I did not.
Did you shoot a 300 blackout into her head, causing her death?
Mr. Griffin, I didn't shoot my wife or my son anytime. Ever.
Notice, he's shaking his head yes. But what do we very often see with people that are trying to really make a point? Think about Barry Morphew and others. When they're confronted with these moments of, did you do this? Did you hurt them? Did you do this egregious thing? As they're saying, no, I didn't. No, I would never hurt my child or my husband or wife or whoever. No, I would never shoot another person. The natural inclination is to shake your head no, because you're saying no. But the body language people have kind of confused this very natural phenomenon of congruence between words and language and body action. They've confused it, and now people want to read something into it like, oh, he's shaking his head no, it means he doesn't believe what he's saying. Oh, no. You want the congruence between what's being said and what you're doing. And so you would hear somebody say no, I did not do that, your head is shaking no. But here we have Alec Murdaugh shaking his head yes, as he's saying, no, I didn't do it. Isn't that crazy? So I'm watching this, I'm like, gosh, that's different than what I would.
You guys see this
Lord.
amazing truck? My
That's
car insurance
different
company
than
was
what I
totally
would
ripping me off for.
Expect to see, only for that moment of, no, I did not harm my child. So let's watch it again, and this reaction that he has, I think it's notable. It's interesting.
Wishes to take the stand.
Watch your step. Yes, ma'am. You place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You'll have a seat on the witness stand. Adjust that microphone. And if you don't mind stating your full name again and spelling your last name.
I'm Alec Murdaugh, Murdaugh. Good morning.
Mr. Murdaugh, on June 7th, 2021, did you take this gun or any gun like it and shoot your son Paul in the chest in the feed room at your property off Moselle Road?
No, I did not.
Mr. Murdaugh, did you take this gun or any gun like it and blow your son's brains out on June 7th or any day or any time?
No, I did not.
Mr. Murdaugh, did you take a 300 blackout, such as this, and fire it into your wife Maggie's leg, torso, or any part of her body?
No, I did not.
Did you shoot a 300 blackout into her head, causing her death?
Mr. Griffin, I didn't shoot my wife or my son anytime. Ever.
And that's right. You can believe me. I'm telling you, I did not, and that is correct. And he's shaking his head yes. So that was very interesting to me. It's incongruent. The shaking of his head yes is incongruent with what he's saying. However, baseline matters. And so, he does have a tendency, as he gets more emotional, he does this bobbing of his head and kind of rocking a bit. So maybe it's some of that was happening too, and I'm willing to, be open to that idea. So number one, is the linguistic verbal intelligence. I think it's very powerful for Alec Murdaugh. This is one of his strong suits. People high in linguistic verbal intelligence remember what they say, remember what they read, and remember what others say to them. They very often enjoy reading and writing and are often quite creative in developing stories. They are often highly tuned in to people's interactions with one another. They can give persuasive speeches. They're strong in debate. They are excellent teachers. They explain things very well. And they tend toward humor. Piaget, Freud were really tuned in to this connection between the ability to make jokes, the ability to make others laugh, and intelligence. Freud actually came out and said, people that are funny have higher intelligence. If you see someone who can deliver a joke very well, make other people laugh, you're probably looking at someone that's quite intelligent. If you run across someone who tells a joke and it just falls flat, maybe it's someone that might not be quite as, high on the IQ scale as explained by Freud. I'm not saying that's right, just giving you a little bit of like history. And Freud actually looked at the emergence of the ability to tell jokes in children, and that's kind of rudimentary. But anyway, so career choices for people that are strong in linguistic and verbal intelligence would be lawyer, writer or journalist, or teacher. And then there's the third intelligence, which is logical or mathematical intelligence. These are people that are very good at reasoning, recognizing patterns, analyzing problems. They think conceptually about numbers, relationships, and patterns. They're usually less tuned in to social interaction. They have excellent problem-solving skills. They enjoy abstract ideas. They love to do experiments, and they can manage very complex computations. And as you might expect, they often choose careers like engineer, accountant, scientist. And not that this may not be quite as important in this mix for Alec Murdaugh. But then the next one is what you've just seen as he is positioning himself on the stand. It's bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Those who have high bodily kinesthetic intelligence are good at body movement, performing actions, physical control. People who are strong in this area tend to have excellent eye-hand coordination and dexterity. So some of this is about, motor control, physical movement, being gifted in dancing, creating things with your hands, having good physical coordination. And like I said, we learned that he did actually play college football, which I thought was very interesting. But here's a big one for them that I think is important for Alec Murdaugh in this situation. They tend to remember by doing. They would rather do something and remember it rather than seeing or hearing it. These are people that would end up being like a surgeon or a sculptor or a builder. There's also musical intelligence. I'm going to bypass that one completely and get to the big one for this situation. And that's interpersonal intelligence versus intrapersonal intelligence. Those who are strong in interpersonal intelligence are good at understanding and interacting with other people. And up to today, I would say that the archetype for understanding interpersonal intelligence in action was President Bill Clinton. He is literally among the most gifted of people that I've ever watched with high levels of interpersonal intelligence. People talked about him that when he enters a room, he immediately seems to make everyone in the room believe that he's talking to them. These would be people that are all the way in the back row, and they would tell their friends, "Oh my God, he looked at me. Oh my God, he was looking at me while he was explaining this or that or the other." Now, it's not likely he was. If you've ever been on a stage in a room with a couple thousand people, you may make eye contact with people, but it doesn't stay with you. You don't remember their face. You don't, unless it was something unusual about it. But Clinton had the skill of making people think they were the most important person in the room. It's one of the things that made him such a great politician. And I find it also incredibly interesting that he ended up with a wife, who also a politician, who she seemed to have a very low level of interpersonal intelligence. But he was off the charts. And like I said, he's sort of my archetype for conceptualizing a person that is gifted really high in IQ in terms of interpersonal intelligence. So their strength is understanding people, but also being able to relate to them. People with interpersonal intelligence communicate very well verbally. And if you're also quite gifted in this whole linguistic verbal intelligence sphere, then you're way ahead of the game, right? And being an attorney, if you're high in linguistic verbal and you're high in interpersonal intelligence, then being an attorney is exactly what you want to do. Or a salesman, you'd be a great salesman. You can talk people into buying things that they don't want to need. So they communicate well verbally. They're hyper aware and very skilled at non-verbal communication. And you're going to see a lot of that with Alec Murdaugh on the stand. He's making use of non-verbal communication. One of those things is opening up his shoulders to these strangers that are judging him, opening up his body into a precarious, you can drive a sword through my stomach, but kind of keeping his head down just a little bit, as if to say, if you attack me, I won't repel. I'm here. I am open and being completely honest with you, and to prove that, I'm willing to let you kill me. It's a subtle nonverbal thing that he did, but people respond to that. Versus the arrogance of getting up there, turning his body to them with a very intent, confident gaze that says, I'm the professor here and I'm here to teach you. And that would be very off-putting, like we saw in the Jodi Arias case. So right here we see he's skilled at his nonverbals. He's shaking his head yes as he's telling the story, not because he agrees with what he's saying, but I think because he wants to send the message to the people that are looking at him. Believe me, what I am saying is right. This is a correct statement that I am making. But in reality, it was incongruent, and that gives me a problem. Also, people that are really gifted interpersonal intelligence, they can look at one situation and see multiple perspectives. They're highly flexible in thought. And that makes them very good at responding on the fly. Being confronted with something that they can't prepare for. They are especially gifted at creating positive relationships with others. And one thing that we've learned about Alec Murdaugh, he had a lot of friends. Lots of people said, I loved him, man. We were buddies. I would have trusted him with my life, and boy, he messed me up. He betrayed me. He violated me. He violated my company. He drugged me into the most god-awful of situations. Think about what he did to his partners. Think about what he did financially and reputation-wise to his family members. He destroyed a multi-generation law firm. But he made people think that he valued them and he loved them and they were wonderful. So people high in interpersonal intelligence, they're very good at creating positive relationships with others. They're also masterful in managing conflict in a group setting. They're these people that when there's lots of arguments happening, maybe a big family is having a big fight or whatever, and they just seem to have the skill of coming in and subtly calming I don't mean sudden, but subtle, S-U-B-T-L-E, in a subtle way, calming everyone and getting everybody on the same page. And he's very good at that. The career choices for people strong in interpersonal intelligence would be a psychologist, philosopher, counselor, a salesperson, politician, and in this case, a litigator. He settled tons of his cases. And I don't know, I've heard a lot of lawyers say you'd much rather settle than to actually go to trial. So, even though he didn't really develop a high level of legal skill, he was shockingly adept at being able to bring a case to settlement. A lot, and one of the witnesses said that Alec could do things that other people couldn't do. He could take an impossible situation, an impossible case, and end up getting a really great settlement out of it, and people would just be like, damn, how did he do that? Well, he did it through the gift of gab. He did it through his ability to read a room, to understand people, to recognize his own influence, both verbal and nonverbal, on the people that he's interacting with. And he may not even know how he can do this. It may be as much a mystery to him as it is to other people, but it's his brain. It's the way his brain operates and thinks, not that he trained his brain to do this. He just knows how somehow. It's like spelling. How many of you guys, you don't know how you know to spell? It's just who you are. It just seems like you came into the world, you know how to spell things. Even when you were in the first, second, third grade, every spelling test was 100. You never studied. You don't know how you know what the word is. You just know it. And other people struggle horribly with things like spelling. So remember, this natural innate ability versus how you're exercising that in the environment. And I think we're going to see this type of linguistic verbal ability in addition to high intrapersonal intelligence. Interpersonal intelligence. And is it effective? Is it working? And then there is intrapersonal intelligence. These are people that are good at being aware of their own emotional states, feelings, and motivations. They tend to really enjoy self-reflection, including daydreaming. They love exploring relationships with other people. They're very aware of what their personal strengths are. They have excellent self-awareness. They're great at analyzing theory. And they understand their own motivations and feelings, which makes them particularly adept at understanding others' motivations. These are people that very often become philosophers or scientists. They're rather unique, people that are high in intrapersonal intelligence. And then in naturalistic intelligence is finding patterns in relationships in nature. And I don't think these are people that are like biologists and gardeners and farmers. And that's not really, operative here. And then there's existential intelligence. And that is being able to get a handle on a long-term outlook, seeing how actions can influence future outcomes, having a strong interest and concern for others. And these are people that will become a pastor, a doctor or nurse, a philosopher. All right. So I think in the case of Alec Murdaugh, I think he is very high in linguistic verbal intelligence. He has very strong skills in terms of his kinesthetic intelligence. And more important, now what we're going to see on the stand is his definite giftedness in interpersonal intelligence. And he has now kind of become my archetype for what that looks like. All right. Think what he did to his housekeeper and her family. That case should be reopened. Did she fall or was she pushed? He earned big money out of her death. Agreed, Martin. Absolutely agreed. Yes. Jackie Hughes. Getting the kids ready. There you go, Jackie. All right, so let's go ahead now with the testimony, and you're going to see why this Gardner's multiple intelligences, why this theory kept popping in my mind as we watch Alec Murdaugh do his thing.
Mr. Murdaugh, is that you? On the Kennel video at 8:44 p.m. on June 7th, the night Maggie and Paul were murdered.
It is.
Were you in fact at the Kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Did you lie to Sled Agent Owen and Deputy Laura Rutland on the night of June 7th and told them that you stayed at the house after dinner?
I did lie to them.
Did you?
Now he owns it, and he is owning it big time. He is being firm, concise, no fluff. He wants them to be confident in him. Yes, I lied. He's gaining their confidence. How bizarre and upside down, weird world is that? Most people would be embarrassed of their behavior. Most people, there would be shame. There would be, I did lie, and I'm embarrassed, and I made a mess of things. But he doesn't want to show weakness. He's got to have their trust. He's got to be the alpha dog if he's going to turn this around in light of the evidence that they have heard. It's fascinating, y'all.
You lied to Agent Owen and Agent Croft on the follow-up interview on June 10th that the last time you saw Maggie and Paul was at dinner.
I did lie to them.
And in the interview of August 11th, did you tell Agent Owen and Agent Croft, did you lie to them by telling them that you were not down at the Kennels on that night?
Yes.
Alec, why did you lie to Agent Owen, Agent Croft, and Deputy Rutland about the last time you saw Maggie and Paul?
As my addiction evolved over time, I would get in these situations or circumstances where I would get paranoid thinking. It could be anything that triggered it. It might be a look somebody gave me. It might be a reaction somebody had to something I did. It might be a policeman following me in a car. That night, June 7th, after finding Mags and Paul, don't talk to anybody without Danny with you. All my partners were just repeatedly telling me that. I had a deputy sheriff taking gunshot tests from my hands. I'm sitting in a police car with David Owen asking me about my relationship with my wife and my son. And all those things coupled together after finding them, coupled with my distrust for Sled, caused me to have paranoid thoughts. Normally, when these paranoid thoughts would hit me, I could take a deep breath real quick, and just think about it, reason my way through it, and just get past it really quickly. on June the 7th. I wasn't thinking clearly. I don't think I was capable of reason. And I lied about being down there. And I'm so sorry that I did.
And notice his eyes looking down, opened up to them. You know, I have nothing to hide. If you want to hurt me, you can hurt me, and I'm no threat to you. I don't know. I know, now don't get me wrong, I know a lot of people are like, I hate this man, he's repulsive, he's horrible, yada yada. But, right, Scottie Nona, right? You heard that, right? Poor me, it kind of whistled through there, but it wasn't overt, you know? I think he was trying to keep it under control and not do this feel sorry for me tactic. I think he's taken a different approach here of, at the time I was sick and I was in a disease state with the addiction, but now I'm not. And now I'm being very firm and definitive, and you can believe in me and trust what I'm saying now. But I was sick then. I think that's the goal here, right? Realistically, how many of you were a little moved by this? That you began to feel some question creeping in. Okay, maybe I should give this guy a second glance. Maybe I do need to hear him out. Anybody at this point? Or are you still just looking at this thinking he is full of you know what? If you believe that he is full of you know what, put a 1. If you found yourself kind of curious and going, wait a minute, maybe there is a story here, put a 2. And let's see where we are. Welcome, everybody. If you think he's full of it, put a 1. But if you feel yourself beginning to kind of thaw a little bit and kind of be a little open to his messaging, put a 2. So Cindy Sue is 2. I'm gonna tell you, his response it kind of made me go, okay, well, this is something I never experienced with Barry Morphew. Okay, I never felt like, oh yeah, he's totally telling the truth. So, mostly 1s. Okay, anybody else? Just me and Cindy Sue. For not there yet for a moment, but I see a manipulator doing what he does best. But you did have kind of this momentary kind of like, okay, maybe I'll listen, right? Mary Rose says, BS, BS, BS. Okay. I do think he's playing his part, but I don't buy it. DB says, he's a charmer for sure. Oh, and DB, he hadn't even gotten started yet. I mean, he hadn't even gotten started. Just wait. This testimony is devastating from an emotional point of view. If you were watching this, let me put it this way. There was not a dry eye in the room. Everyone was crying, including his attorneys. Everyone was crying. Everyone was choked up, except for 2 people. Buster and Condon. He didn't seem to get emotional. Oh yeah, Meghan Markle is watching this with a note in a spiral notebook and pen, taking notes, trying to learn how to act. Exactly. I really think he might be innocent. A lot of people have been swayed just from today. Well, from yesterday. So Barry could learn from him. Barry could, yeah, Barry could, that guy could learn from a lot of people. He is different. All right, here we go.
I'm sorry to my son Buster. I'm sorry to Grandma and Papa T. I'm sorry to both of our families. Most of all, I'm sorry to Mags and Pawpaw.
That is powerful. That is powerful. You know, a lot of people completely forget the victim when they're going through these manipulations and machinations of, oh, I'm so tearful. See how bad I feel about things. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But they never say I'm sorry to the victim. I'm telling you, this guy's good.
I would never intentionally do anything to hurt either one of them.
Notice he's got real tears. I'm talking about they're flowing like a water faucet. And he also stops crying. A lot of people can put things like in their eyes that irritate their eyes that will make them tear up like that and have a lot of water coming out of their eyes. But he cries and then he stops crying, and then he cries and he stops crying. And in the big smell test, there's lots of snot. I hate to be gross. Please forgive me. But that's kind of your test for, is someone pulling your leg? Is someone pretending to cry? You cannot force your body to have, a runny nose. You can't train for that. You can train to teach yourself how to cry, to get tears and whatnot. The whole nose thing, you can't affect that. It's a part of the visceral, emotional, neurological response. This is so complicated, y'all. I'm telling you, this is very interesting.
Ever.
Did you continue lying after that night? Did you not?
But once I lied, I continued to lie. Yes, sir.
Why?
Watch.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave.
Oh.
But once I told the lie, I told my family, I had to keep lying.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. There's your linguistic verbal intelligence on display.
Alex, tell the jury what happened on the evening of June 7th, starting when you met with Paul.
Don't buy solar panels. Seriously. There is a very good reason why we're saying this. If you're thinking about
I'd been at
One more thing, too, that I'm going to comment on because I find it so distracting. You notice how when he talks at times there's a clicking sound? We actually associate that with heroin use, right? Where does it come from? Well, technically, I guess it is extreme dehydration because opiates do dehydrate the body. So the clicking noise we associate with heroin users, although certainly people that take are overdosing on pain pills or whatnot. I don't mean they're dying, but they're really intoxicated from having had way too much pain pill or whatnot. they can do the same type of clicking, but it is from dehydration. And, you know, one would think another thing that can make you have a dry mouth is nerves, being anxious. That your body can then, you know, cause you to have a very dry mouth. And I wonder if that's what's happening here, that he's just super, super, super nervous. And that's part of that. Or maybe he's on Suboxone. Maybe he's on some kind of a medication for the treatment of opiate addiction. I don't know. But it is distracting. I know it is. But also just remember, it comes from extreme dehydration, but you can be very dehydrated, you know, by fear. Fear will make your mouth go dry. Anxiety. Sometimes people that have panic attacks will talk about not being able to swallow because their mouth is so dry.
At work that day, a fairly normal day. You mean start in the morning or?
Sure, start in the morning.
It was just a regular morning. Maggie was leaving to go out of town. She was going to a doctor's appointment, and she had some stuff to do at Edisto, where she was having some work done on our house at Edisto. But Maggie was there that morning. She went to leave, and she told me she was doing these things. I always asked Maggie to come back home and stay with me. But anyway, Maggie had left. She did her thing. I went to work, did work. I learned from Paul that...
Who's Paul?
That's Paul, my son Paul Murdaugh.
And your name for him was Paul?
Yeah, we called him Paul.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And Buster, Maggie, I called him Paul or Paul Terry, but Mags called him Paul, Buster called him Paul. A lot of people called him Paul. But anyway, I learned about I'd known that CB, the guy that worked for us, had sprayed the sunflowers. I knew about that, but I'd been out of town. I didn't know they were dead. Paul let me know they had died. So we had to replant the dove field. That's our dove field, which
That went through my mind.
dove
the
field's
pawpaw
just a big,
patch, right?
it's a big social part of having property. People would come, and it's just a social big part of it. So the dove field was a big deal. So when the sunflowers got killed, we knew they were dead. Paul was coming home, and I learned that early.
Y'all indulge me a minute. I can't help it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I want to be like you. Ooh, ooh. I want to walk like you. Talk like you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Because he's talking about being in the pawpaw patch. Yeah.
Monday morning.
And we'll catch back up, but at some point in time, did you meet up with Paul?
Yeah. After work, I met Paul at the property.
And we're going to backfill and talk about more of the day, but I just want to focus in on that evening right now.
Okay.
When Paul gets to the property, what do y'all do?
First thing we do is we go to the dove field, and we look at the dove field. And
how'd you get to the dove field?
he had come in my brother's truck. We got in my son Buster's black pickup truck. We called it Buster's truck, or the black pickup truck. You've heard it called too, but I call it Buster's truck.
Okay, so you're in Buster's truck, and you go to the dove field. Tell the jury what else.
Well, that's the first thing we do. We go to the dove field and we look, and it was clearly it didn't. You could tell they were. I mean, you could tell they'd been sprayed, and you could tell they were dead. I mean, they might have still had a tiny bit of life, but they were dead. So we knew that. So we knew we had to replant the whole field. So that didn't take but a second. But after that, Paul We just rode the property. We spent time together. We rode around and we spent time together on the property.
And I have a
Yeah,
question here. Was this an act of goodbye? Was this his awareness of what was going to happen? And, you know, he did have a relationship with them. He was their coach. He, you know, spent time with them. So if we're talking about a guy who might, theoretically, might be a psychopath who kind of lacks real emotional connection to others, then that would predispose him to be able to do something like this. But we just went through Gardner's intelligences. This man is the exact opposite of a psychopath. He's the exact opposite. He does know and understand human relationships. He does understand emotion. He also understands how to manipulate emotion. But you got to ask yourself, what in the world drove this man from being in a family where not only is he working hard, but he's also spending a lot of time with his family members and friends, socializing, having fun together, living lives that were interconnected, needing one another and helping one another? What got him to this point that he would, in a premeditated fashion, take the lives of his youngest child and his wife? What in the world would do that? I struggle with this part, y'all. I struggle with this, him calculating, planning out a sophisticated type of hit job. I'm more inclined to believe that he was sick, he was on the drugs, all that stuff. He was also under the gun financially, and he was about to be exposed, that whole narcissistic exposure thing. And that when it all came to a head, he snapped. Everybody wanted to say Chris Watts snapped because Shanann was so unpleasant, right? That was hogwash. This is actually something that I would be more inclined to say, yes, I can see where he may have snapped. There were multiple layers of anxious distress. He was dealing with life-altering changes in multiple areas of living. His emotional resources were stretched to the limit. He had destroyed most of his financial resources. He's at the end of his rope. And that is when people snap. That is when people snap. It's a very, let's look at child abuse, for example. It's a very rare thing to have a person who is having a good life and things are going well and they got plenty of money and they're not using drugs and they have a job and a career and they just decide to beat their child. That is rare. That just does not happen unless there's kind of this sadistic psychological problem happening. The greatest majority of abuse happens when people are at the end of their rope, when they have multiple factors in their life that is exerting a great deal of emotional demand, and they just get overwhelmed. All the what they have developed in terms of available coping skills gets used up, and then when that's gone, then there's nothing else to do except to fight back. they feel backed into a corner, and then it becomes an act of self-preservation to fight back. And sometimes it's to hit a 3-year-old kid, which doesn't really make sense when you're calm and you're got your stuff together. But if you don't have anything, and you're sick, and you have no support, and you have no money, and you have no job, and you have no peace, and you have nobody to call to say, help me, you may very well feel like, I have to put an end to what's happening here. Look at Andrea Yates. She's a good example of a kind of environmental never land where she was erased and her role became strictly as caregiver to these kids, and her husband made no kind of attempt to intervene and give her support. She needed help. They were living a lifestyle that would have made me insane. It would have made you insane. It was impossible. And she snapped. And unfortunately, it included a psychosis, and did the unthinkable. Try to think about this guy, Alec Murdaugh, through that filter of Andrea Yates. His life was in tatters. It didn't look like it yet. People were still looking from the outside in, going, well, maybe this will be okay. Maybe he'll get it together. But he knew how far he'd gone. And so I see more that he snapped. But when you listen to his testimony, if you're high in empathy, it's so... He doesn't look like the guy that killed his wife and son.
Duck pond.
Oh yeah, we went to several food plots. We went to Single Oak Stand, we called it, which is across the road. I know we went to the Bridge Stand. We went to the duck pond where we stayed for a minute, and
Did you?
I can remember the duck pond specifically because I had helped Paw plant the dove field and the corn in the dove field. So sunflowers, corn, and I had helped him plant the corn in the dove field. Paw had planted the duck pond by himself, and he's making a really big deal to me about how much better the corn was doing in the duck pond than it was in the dove field. We stayed there for a little while. We were at the cabin for a little while. We rode around the cabin looking at it.
No, cabin is what?
That's it's just a little small. It's truly a cabin. It's a 4-room structure. It's got a little living area, a little kitchen. It's got 2 little bedrooms and 1 little bathroom. And that's what you've heard talk about, where the kids stayed some summers. And
is that what the jury's seen? Some overhead pictures. It's right there on Moselle Road.
Yeah, it's right up on Moselle Road, and it's very close to the driveway that goes to the shop and the kennels.
Did you spend any time at the shop, you think?
Oh yes, I mean the shop was. That was sort of the hub. That was the main place. If you weren't at the house, you might be out going to this field or this food plot or this duck pond or this part of the river, but the shop is where the kennels were located. That was, you were always there. Something was always going on there. You're always doing something. That's where all the tools were. That's where all the equipment was kept. That was the main hub.
Right.
And so we were there that day. There was a point in time where we unloaded the bulldozer that had part of the property. It was on a trailer. We unloaded it and sprayed it down real quick. That was just one of the many things we did that day.
One of the things the jury's seen, Alec, is a Snapchat video of you and doing something with a tree. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And so what was happening there?
That's just part of when we were riding. That particular location where that was is at a food plot that we called Sawtooth Oaks. Named that because Sawtooth Oaks that you can't see in the picture, but what that tree is, at all these foods in air, it's not as big as a field, but it's like a field where you plant vegetation for wildlife. Like it might be cowpeas, beans, plant, and then there's a feeder to attract deer. Then planted these little fruit trees on these stands, and what you see me doing is fooling with a fruit tree that I'd been tending to. It had fallen over. I had straps on it. I had strings on it that were holding it up. One of the strings popped. I undid the other string, and it was falling over, and Pawpaw was laughing at me, trying to get it back upright. And it was just a fruit tree that I'd been dealing with for years, and it wouldn't stand up straight.
And were you and Paul having a good time at that point?
If you have a passion for it, pursue it. I just kind of went for it, and I'm here now.
With over 68.
You could not be around Pawpaw You could not be around him and not have a good time.
Were you close to Paul?
You couldn't be any closer than Pawpaw and I, and Buster and I were and are. He's just wonderful. Wonderful.
And it's one of the things you enjoyed doing together was just riding the property?
I love doing anything with Pawpaw. It was an absolute delight. But yeah, one of the things, Paul's passion. Paul was passionate about a lot of things, but that property was really a passion of his. He loved to work it. He loved to work the fields. He loved to work the food plots. He loved to hunt. He'd work on the roads. He would work on all of it. He would work on. He worked on the whole property. It was his passion.
So on the evening of the 7th, jury's been inundated with data from various different sources, but
sure,
just ballpark, can you, knowing what we know now after reviewing everything, but roughly when do you remember Paul getting there and you getting there and starting to ride the property?
Now that I've had the benefit of seeing all of these records, Pawpaw got home, I believe, a little bit before 7 o'clock. And I got home a little bit before him. I think the details have been that I got home around 6:42 or 6:45 or something like that, and Paul got there, very quickly thereafter,
and then
by 7 o'clock.
So you rode the property for a while. Do you remember when Maggie arrived?
Yeah, it was later than that. It was 8 or after 8. I think it was after 8 and looking at the records. A little bit after 8.
And do you remember her arriving or where you were when she arrived?
I believe that I was at the shop when she came through, which would not be unusual for her, having been away. If Blanca had gotten the mail or somebody had gotten the mail, maybe not, but if somebody had not gotten the mail, it would be perfectly normal for her to pull through there. And I believe she did pull through there that day.
So I think it's interesting. There's a point here. I think it's interesting that we heard before all this, we heard that Maggie said that Alec was up to something and she didn't want to go to Moselle, and she thought he was being sneaky and that they were separated, like getting a divorce or whatever. we heard these stories, but it didn't come out on the stand. In fact, the exact opposite came out. So what do y'all think of that? I don't know where these stories came from. They were repeated often, like, but trust me, if they knew that Maggie was separated from Alec, that would be in this mix. That would be in this exchange of information. So, I don't know. I think that's interesting. I also think about the whole sunflower deal. They're planting the sunflowers and other things to attract the wildlife so that they can do their hunting, correct? So, why would this guy spray the sunflowers and kill them? I haven't really heard anybody. Y'all are killing me with the mag, paw, bong, bong. We're going to call him Mar, GG, big, or Bups. Okay. So, why would this guy spray and kill for specifically the sunflower seeds, right? Not seeds. The sunflowers. Why would he do that? Was it passive aggressive? Was he feeling irritation and anger with Paul? So Alec says that in one of the interviews, he says that Paul was teaching the guy what to do, that he was bringing him up to speed, like teaching him and getting him competent. Well, what if you're an old guy? What if you're an old guy? You've been out in the world, maybe you're not some fancy attorney, but you're definitely got, age on your side. And now you've got some little, 19-year-old kid pushing you around, telling you what to do. How happy do you think you're going to be that your boss is, a kid? Not very, right? So I think, for me, I wish that they would have, and maybe it's still yet to come, but I wish we would have learned a little bit more about the guy that's, killed the sunflowers. Was there a problem between them? Was he in a moment of discontent? Was there a power struggle going on between Paul and him? Right? So it'd be interesting to get a little bit more information on the whole sunflower thing. And was that a precursor? And is he the guy that showed up and shot him? That's the only other than organized crime. Please don't get me wrong. I'm aware of the whole drug thing. Alec, if what he's saying is true, that he's spending $50,000 a week on drugs, we all know he was in communication with dangerous fellows. Can we agree? He was living a high-risk lifestyle, correct? So, and for me, let me say this. For me, if Maggie and Paul were gunned down as part of a drug problem, an organized crime problem, that still makes Alec Murdaugh responsible for their deaths, because he's the dumbass that invited this type of mess into his family's life, right? No, oxycodone does not cost $1 a pill. Oxycodone on the street can cost $30 to $100 a pill. and he's spending $50,000 a week, which is, I don't believe that's true. I don't believe he might have been buying $50,000 worth of pills. He wasn't taking $50,000 worth of pills, because if he had, his liver would be gone and he would be dying of cirrhosis. He'd be dead. Right? So, well, we're talking about the cost on the street, not from your local, Walgreens with insurance. So yes, he's still responsible. Don't get me wrong. If somebody showed up and, put a handcuff on him and shot them and then made him and then said, well, you're going to have to get yourself out of this one, Alec. He's still responsible. He's the idiot that brought that lifestyle to his front door. He did it 100%. But I do think if you want to be in true crime, then I do think you have to consider other factors. And one of those factors is, was there a problem happening between Paul and the guy who killed the sunflowers? Right? I think the prosecutors are doing a bad job. I know people in the drug world that could send a messenger to keep giving me money or else. It only affects your liver. Oh my God, Mary Rose, stop! Oh my God, you're driving me crazy this morning. Stop! Quit. No, sunflowers don't mean death. And I promise you, there is more to taking $50,000 a week of chemical without Tylenol is going to destroy the liver and kidneys. I promise you. Okay. Excuse my little early morning, I need coffee moment.
And Paul and I were at the shop, I believe.
And then what did you do after Maggie arrived?
Maggie went to the house, and I know that. But shortly after, however I learned that Maggie got home, I went to the house when Maggie got home, and I left Paul at the shop.
So, and what did you do when you got to the house?
I saw Mags, talked to Mags, and I took a shower.
The clothes that we saw in that Snapchat video was that the clothes you had at work that day?
Yes, those are the clothes I had on at work that day.
And the jury's seen you in those clothes, and what's on June 7th. How tall were you, and how much did you weigh?
On June 7th, well, I'm a hair over 6'4", right at 6'4". On June the 7th, I was about 265 pounds, 264, 265.
And this was in June, June 7th.
Yes, sir.
When you're outside, riding around and do you get hot and sweaty?
Absolutely. I mean, Paul and I had done some things. We
That is a very
unloaded
good point,
bulldozers, cleaned the
Keister,
bulldozer.
Bunny.
We fooled around. Yeah, I mean, I
Getting out of the
sweated.
way so they could
I was
do what they needed to do.
and taking prescription pills also makes you sweat worse, or at least taking oxycodone makes you sweat more than you normally do.
So was it unusual for you to take a shower when you got back to the house?
Not at all.
And after you took a shower, what did you change into?
I changed into the clothes that you've seen in this.
Martin, you are so funny. Okay, so someone help me with this. Explain to me about Paul, or as Martin said, Pawpaw. Pawpaw found Lick Lick's stash and told Mag. Yeah, and it caused, a big problem, right? So, but hey, Merritt Faye, welcome. Help me understand, when did Paul find the stash? Where, in relation to June 7th and the day that they were killed, when did all that happen, Martin? Oh my God, Sundown Farms. That's terrible. Yeah, exactly, Elizabeth. You're taking $50,000 worth of pills a week. You're going to be drooling and curled up in a ball under your desk. You're not going to be working and settling lawsuits. Absolutely. Okay, so it all happened way before. It's not like he needed his pills on June the 7th and they had destroyed his pills and so he was going to be in withdrawal, right? Have I got that right? Sure, Cindy. I agree. He is drooling. He's doing the opposite of drooling. I wish he were drooling because the clicking and the dry mouth is, it's hard for me to take. Ugh. Yeah. Got to be careful when you have a microphone. You got to make sure you got plenty to drink and you're well hydrated because it can be a really bad sound.
Trial, shorts and the shirt.
Okay. When you got out of the shower and changed clothes, what'd you do next?
Building your custom home is now easier than ever. And with America's Home
It's
Place,
so easy,
we can show you
y'all.
how. During our 50 years as
It's
a
so
custom
easy.
home
It doesn't
builder,
cost
we've built
any
homes for
money.
nearly 40,000
It's-
families
they
and mastered
give
the art
you
of building
free
in the
land.
process.
I went back out where Mags and Pawpaw were and
What were
for
they
dinner.
doing? What's going on?
Mags had, as you've heard, Blanca had prepared dinner, but it had been cooked earlier. Mags had fixed, I know Mags had fixed mine and her plate because I didn't fix a plate. She may have fixed Pawpaw. Pawpaw was eating and Pawpaw was almost done eating by the time I got back out, which also wasn't unusual. I mean, Pawpaw was always on the go. I mean, he never sat still. And, you know, he'd sit down to eat, but then he's going on to his next item.
And
So then Maggie and I ate.
and do y'all eat at the table? Do you eat at the den? What's your normal habit?
We would do both, but, I mean, when we ate at the table, it was really sort of more formal or not formal, but just more of an organized thing. Our normal, what we would normally do on a regular evening is we would eat in the
Yes,
den
big
in front of
ups.
the TV. And that's where we ate that day. I ate on the couch, the table. Maggie had a little a TV tray that she kept over there, and Pawpaw would usually sit in a recliner and eat off of the ottoman.
Was the TV on?
Yes,
Was that normal
Wait,
for the TV
what?
to be on?
yes. TV, if we were in the house,
Oh,
TV was
okay.
on.
So what happened next, Alec?
Pawpaw moved on doing whatever he was doing. I don't know if he was in the gun room doing something, or he was in his room doing something, or he was outside doing something. I actually thought he'd gone to the shed, but in looking at, to the shop, but in looking at the benefit of having these records that we have, I know he was still at the house, or somewhere around the house, doing something, but he wasn't in there with Maggie and I. But Maggie wanted to go to the kennels, and I had eaten dinner. I laid back on the couch where I was sitting. Maggie wanted to go to the kennels, and she asked me to go, and I didn't go at that time. I didn't want to go.
Why didn't you want to go?
It was hot. I just had a shower. I knew I'd end up doing more work, sweating more, and the dogs is always a chaotic scene, and I just didn't want to go right then.
What'd I tell y'all? Remember a couple of last week, I guess. Remember how I said he sounded irritated with the dogs? That, you know, maybe the dog, Bubba, getting the chickens was a problem. The neighbors were pissed off about, you know, the dog always killing the chickens. I've been there. I lived that country life. My dad would just get red. Just, the dogs would break, they had some yellow labs, and they just so frustrated when they'd bring the chickens up, because that meant a farmer from down the road was coming up to complain about his damn chickens, and he's not making any eggs now, and who's going to be responsible for his losses. And if you live in the city or you live in the burbs, you can't really envision this as being a reality or being a possibility. But for those of us that live very rural lives, oh no, it definitely can be a problem. In fact, there was a situation with my grandparents where mean old man down the road ended up getting the guy's chickens and plucking all the feathers out of them and sending them home with no feathers. So yeah, these weird kind of farmer wars are not like, fighting over the back fence in the burbs. It's different. And sometimes, poor animals are hurt in the process. And so I could see, listening to the video of Paul, I could envision that maybe the dog, the chicken thing, all that, maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Maybe that was the thing that finally caused him to snap.
Well, let me ask you, what had you done the previous days, like Friday and Saturday and Sunday?
Martin.
Start with Friday or go backwards?
Yeah, start with Friday.
All right,
Just briefly.
So 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th. So June the 4th, my dad was in the hospital in Savannah, Georgia, at Memorial Hospital. And I went down to visit him Friday afternoon, and I stayed with him in the hospital. I spent the night.
I agree, lightning bug.
There. He was real sick. I mean, he was having a hard time.
Did you get much sleep Friday night?
No, I mean, I had a real sweet nurse found me. At first, there was just a hard chair in there like this, but a nurse found me a soft chair, sort of like a recliner. So, I mean, I'm sure I slept, but I didn't sleep. I didn't get a night's sleep. No, sir.
And then Saturday and Sunday?
Saturday, we had plans with Buster and Brooklyn. Y'all have heard about Brooklyn. It's Buster's wonderful little girlfriend. And Mags and I had plans with them to meet them in Columbia, to go to the South Carolina, it was a regional baseball tournament. And South Carolina was playing Virginia, I believe. So when I got back from Savannah and met up with Mags, at some point we headed to Columbia.
I wish I was in the land of cotton.
Going on in between there. So we headed up to Columbia and met Bus and Brooklyn.
And did you stay in Columbia Saturday night?
We did. We went to the ball game, and I remember it was an evening game. We went pretty early and tailgated. Maggie had reconnected with a college friend who coincidentally had married a college friend of mine, and they had a son that
Dirty
played
South
for Carolina.
Club, and
He was a
Paw
first
and
baseman.
Mags knew too much, and
a really good
Mags
little
had
player.
1 foot out the door,
And
so Big Red.
We met
got
them
him.
and tailgated with them, and it was a lot of fun. They had a lot of the parents of the players that were playing for
They're down to
Carolina.
two.
And, it was just it was.
They're down
it
to
was
2 alternates too,
a fun
Elizabeth.
time. We tailgated, and then we went to, and it was a night game, so we went to the game, and the game got over. It was fairly late into the evening, and after that, Bus, Brooklyn, and Mags and I,
Bus.
I believe we went to the restaurant in the hotel where we were staying, but we went and had dinner, and then Bus and Brooklyn went home, and of course Maggie and I went to our room.
So Cindy Sue says, "I'm sorry, but I think he may know who did it, but he wasn't the trigger guy." for some reason, and I don't know what it is, but I've always felt like someone else was there with them. I think he was there when it happened. I don't think he did it. I think he may have been forced to watch. I think the emotion that we're seeing when he talks about what happened, that's awfully hard to believe that he can control that much. The tears and the snot, and no, there's something else. Maybe that was his punishment. Maybe he owed violent people a lot of money. That would explain the stealing of the settlements and that kind of thing. He's not a dumb guy. He's not a stupid man. He knew stealing that money, he was in deep trouble. He knew that. Something else, there's something bigger, and I think, I think it's the whole cornbread mafia, people. Sure do.
And then get up the next day, and is there another game?
Another game the next
Critters,
day.
how are you? Good morning.
That's right.
Hey,
And,
Tommy Larson.
And then after that, you head back to Moselle with Maggie.
Yeah, we went to the game. That's right. Mags and I go back to Moselle.
The jury's heard about, I think Ms. Rass talking about you bringing Krispy Kreme donuts to your dad.
That's
Maggie
a
loved
problem,
them.
isn't it, Tommy Larson? Yep,
She
I agree.
spoiled my dad, and always taking him something. My dad loved sweets, and she and I picked up donuts and took Krispy Kreme donuts to him.
And then y'all both spent the night together at Moselle on Sunday night. Did you both spend the night at Moselle on Sunday night?
Yes.
Well, he's valuable, Elizabeth
the 7th
Gregory,
was a
if
work
he's
day?
running drugs.
That's right. It's a Monday, June the 7th.
Hang on. I'll rephrase it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was Monday the 7th a work day for you?
Yes.
And I just wanted to give that background. And so moving forward to when you testified previously about Maggie asking you to go to the kennels, were you tired?
Oh, yes, I was tired.
And you had just had a shower.
Just had a shower.
And
Guys, stop getting ripped off by your car insurance company and check this out.
Okay.
Are you ready? All right, so let's take a look.
and you said that, well, did you go with Maggie to the kennels immediately?
No, I did not.
What'd you do? What did she leave?
Yes, she did. She left and Pawpaw was gone.
Do you know how she got to the kennels?
At the time, I didn't, but now looking at these condensed records and understanding the timeline, it's clear to me that she rode with Pawpaw.
And
But didn't his
did you stay in the
truck-
house?
See,
Yes.
I'm so
For how long?
confused.
Not
Someone
long.
help me. Someone help me. Didn't they find Paul's truck on the highway away from the house? Exactly, Critters. It's like a plantation, isn't it? Yeah, it's like they're naming a plantation, Moselle. Yeah, I agree. It's kind of cringy. There are telemetrics, cell phone. I know area scared to death. Velick, James from court spoke to people there. That is very interesting, Shar. He is masterful. Yeah, he can work the entire room, Critters. Crying for Maggie and Paul. Please stop calling them Pawpaw and Mags. The detectives huddled together while he was testifying, shaking their heads. Yeah, so Tommy, that is something later on. The camera pulls back a little bit, and we are able to see more of how the prosecution team and some of the gallery, how they're responding. Wow. They were just livid. This is so complicated. This is one of the, up to now, I think the Jodi Arias trial has been kind of like my I think it's the most interesting in terms of just being a student of human interaction. This takes cake. This is different. This is completely different. His other truck was at the garage getting repaired. Okay, so his regular truck was at the garage, and then the truck he was using was found on the side of the road, Martin? Martin, stop. Paul had 2 trucks. Okay. All right. There was a rush to judgment. Yet, where did we see that before, Tommy? Yeah, same exact thing happened to old Bear. Right, Martin? Bear, too, walked free because there was a rush. One of the trucks was found on the side of the road, Martin. Was that found? That was like not on June 7th. I thought they found his truck on June 8th or something on the side of the road. (911) ask a vehicle with flashers to be placed for cops to see. True that, Tommy. Not, yeah, I know they found the phone, but they found his truck not at the property. We may have to look this up later on because it's driving me crazy. I have been thinking all along that they said that his truck was found on the side of the road, away from the property. There was a farm truck that was there on the property that he was using, but his truck was found away from the property. Hi, Day Tripper. One-way ticket, yeah. You got your... Good morning, Jewel. Morning, Char. Okay, so I need to follow up and find the information on the truck. I'm make a mental note of that.
I laid back on the couch, put my feet up, and like many times when Maggie asked me to do something that I didn't want to do or didn't start out doing, I changed my mind and decided I'm gonna ride up there.
And Alec, were you in withdrawal
And I did.
that day?
And how did you get to the kennels?
I went on a golf cart.
And when was the last time you took a pill?
Was the golf
4
cart at
a.m.?
the house, the main house?
Yeah.
You would have been firmly in withdrawal by 9 p.m.
And it was
unless
there most
someone
of the
gave you
time.
some medicine.
And when you got down to the kennels, what was happening?
It's just what I thought it was. It was a little bit of chaos. I mean, it was clear to me that Max had just let the dogs out. The 2 dogs that were out were really her pet dogs. One is Grady. You've heard about a black lab. That's Grady. That's Buster's dog. And the other is the yellow lab that you've heard about.
Oh, look,
That's
look. Critters is to the rescue. Critters. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Okay, so Critters verifies. I knew I heard this. Paul's truck was found on June the 8th, day after the murders, in Hampton County. The defense said Paul Murdaugh had traded vehicles with his uncle John Marvin before the homicides. But why? John Marvin Murdaugh reported investigators that Paul's truck broke down while he was rushing to the Moselle Road when he heard about the shooting. So it's John Marvin that left the truck on the side of the road. Lulu Bell. When he looks past the camera, his eyes are very cold. Oh, he definitely has cold. Yes, I agree. Interesting. What in the hell was Marv doing with Pawpaw's truck? We're gonna have to think about this, y'all. This is significant to my strategizing and This is Wild Speculation Friday, damn it. Martin, Marmar. We got to think about this. This is interesting. Okay, we definitely have to work on Wild Speculation Friday. We need some speculation on why the hell Marmar was driving Pawpaw's truck and it got left on the side of the road.
Bubba. Bubba was mine and Maggie's dog, but it was really mine, Maggie's, Bus, and Pawpaw's dog. It was a family dog. But Bubba's the dog I hunted. I mean, Maggie loved Bubba. She loved Grady too, but I mean, she had a special place for Bubba. But anyway, when the dogs first were let out, the first thing they would do is they would run. If you look at the overhead picture that's behind the kennels, so you got the kennels and the chicken coop sort of form an L shape, and in that L was some planted pines. First thing the dogs would do is go out in that kennel, and you know, Bubba and Grady, I think, learned this from Bubba, but Grady would do it too. But Bubba had to mark every tree. I mean, he would go and he'd do a little number on this tree and that tree. You know how dogs do, and it's marking his territory.
Bubba was a dog's dog.
And so that was the first thing those dogs did when they came out. When I got there, those dogs were in that area. So that's why I believe that it hadn't been long before they'd been let out. Grady was chasing guineas, which was a normal thing to do.
What are guineas?
Guinea fowl is a guinea fowl is like
They're the
it's like a
security
chicken.
system.
It's a domestic bird that, you know, we had them. They make a lot of racket. It's like a, you know, I know this sounds silly, but it's like a guard bird. Because anytime, you know, they just make a lot of racket anytime anything unusual is going on. If anything disturbs them,
like,
it could be a person, it could be somebody driving up, whatever, they're going to make a lot of racket. So Grady's chasing the guineas. You know, Paul's fooling with
y'all are a tough crowd,
Logan's
man.
dog
I'm
Cash.
telling you.
Maggie's just kind of standing there watching the dogs, which is normal, and they were in that place. As the dogs are out longer, they branch out more. But at that point in time, they were right there. So that told me they hadn't been out a long time. Bubba catches the chicken.
And that pissed you off, didn't it, Alec?
I'm talking to Maggie for just, you know, a short time before Bubba catches the chicken. I take the chicken, I put it, when Bubba didn't chase, these dogs didn't chase the chickens to kill them. And they didn't normally kill them. They did kill them sometimes.
Down, boy.
But it was about the chase with those dogs. And they were proud when they caught one. You could just tell by the way Bubba would prance to you when he brought the chicken to you. He was proud that he had caught it. But he wasn't trying to kill it. And so most times the chicken wasn't dead. And that chicken wasn't dead. But a lot of times they would be stunned and they would be just real lethargic. So you had to take the chicken and you had to put it up somewhere where, you know, the chicken could be by itself for a minute and it would eventually, usually, you know, come back to normal and go on about
Bubba lives with Blanca.
You know, whatever a chicken does.
Did you get the chicken out of Bubba's mouth?
I did. I took the chicken from Bubba and I put it, On top of that,
Now we've seen, this video.
So listen, y'all. This is not really deflection, right? What is happening right here is he's making friends with the jury. He's presenting himself in a way that the jury is going to look at him as a human being, not a monster. And so what he's describing is not the sordid, lurid underbelly of drug addiction and organized crime. What they're seeing is they're seeing a man who's living a very simple country life. That he's just, from the piney woods. He's no different than all of them sitting on the jury. He's just like them. He's got the same sorts of domestic irritants and irritations that they do. That's what's happening here. They just need one. They just need one juror to say, "Oh, man. Oh, Lick Lick is a good guy. Lick Lick is not the monster that he's been painted out to be. He's just a good old boy. And what are you going to do with good old boys like me? When I was a kid, Uncle Remus would put me to bed with a picture of Stonewall Jackson above my head. And then Daddy'd come in to kiss his little man." That's what's happening. He is painting this picture of, all shucks, guys, I'm not a big old bad monster like this mean, hateful prosecution wants you to believe I am. I'm one of you. We're down home, folks, and we got to stick together, don't you know?
With Cash, Rogan's dog. Did you know that was going on? What do you remember about that?
It's your home, and there's no place like Wayfair to make the morning chaos organized.
yeah, I knew Paul was fooling with. When I pulled up on the golf cart, Maggie was standing back, sort of where the driveway would be. It sort of runs out at the feed room.
Krispy Kreme, not
the
just
storage
donuts.
room, what we call
They've
it's
got to
been
be
called the
Krispy
feed
Kreme
room.
donuts.
But it sort of ran out. Maggie was a little bit further up where she could see back in that angle where the dogs were. Paul was fooling with Rogan's dog back towards the kennel. If I remember when I first got there, Paul was more in the driveway, but then I knew Paul was in the kennel fooling with Cash, yes. But did I know what he was doing? I didn't know exactly what he was doing, no.
Did you?
I knew he was fooling with his tail.
Was Cash in the kennel when you pulled up, do you think?
Not when I first got there.
Cindy.
Did Bubba or Grady have any collars on?
Yes.
Both dogs, one dog, do you remember?
I don't know about Grady, but I know Bubba had on his what we call a tracking collar. Paul, for his hunting dogs, Paul had a series of tracking collars, and I think there were 5. It might have been 6. It's a tracking collar that had a device that would tell you where that collar was, so that if Bubba was bad about, he would stay close for a minute, but then he would take off, and he especially do that on Maggie. He would take off and run, and so he had on a tracking collar that if he did that, you could know, okay, he's a half a mile down here. It's not going to follow him but so far, but it would follow a good long distance, so you could go get the dog if he ran off, which Bubba frequently would do, especially when it was just Mags and Bubba. And so Paul probably would have been the one to put that on Bubba.
So you've got to swear you've gotten the chicken out of Bubba's mouth and put it up on a doghouse or something?
I believe what I put it on, and I don't remember this, but I've seen pictures and all this, and I saw the chicken sitting on top of the, what looks to me like a portable dog crate. Wherever it was sitting on there is where I would have put it up there. You know, have any reason to believe anybody else moved that chicken, and it ultimately, that chicken did die.
And what'd you do after you got the chicken out of Bubba's mouth?
I got out of there. I left. I went back to the house.
All right. Well, before we do that,
Now I found that to be strange, right?
dog kennel.
The syntax, I got out of there. Does that sound like does that sound normal, or does that sound ominous? Does that sound like he may have been aware that bad things were about to happen? What do y'all think? I got out of there. To me, that sounds very odd.
Top of the,
Listen.
what looks to me like a portable dog crate. Wherever it was sitting on there is where I would have put it up there. You know, have any reason to believe anybody else moved that chicken, and it ultimately, that chicken did die.
And what'd you do after you got the chicken out of Bubba's mouth?
I got out of there.
Dupe and delight. Look at that smile on his face. Look at him grinning. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. What do you think? Is that Duper's delight? Exactly, Elizabeth. Yes. He's just put the bow on his story. Y'all thought y'all had me. Ha 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 ha. Let me show you this. And so what you do after your kind soul, you saved the poor old chicken. What'd you do then? After saving a life, Alec, what did you do then? I got out of there, man. My work is done. And I went and, laid down, put my feet up. Chilling like a villain, baby. Right? So, but it doesn't exactly work. Number one, it sounds ominous to say, I got out of there. It seems like he knew there might have been something bad about to go down. Or perhaps he says it because he's being smug and his mask slipped a little bit and we got to see the real guy. But here's one of the things that really bothers me. That shotgun and that 300, those are loud guns, y'all. Loud. He never talks about hearing it. His timeline sucks. The timeline it's too in the timeline as it is, there's not enough wiggle room to account for shock. Who thinks that's important? You think about this. You're just tootling around, living your best life, trying to figure out how you're going to hide the fact that you're a, embezzling criminal element who is destroying all his friends' family. You're just living your best life, thinking about when you're going to get your next pill, and life's been good to old Alec, right? And you drive up, you've just left the beloved Pawpaw and Mags, and they're out there playing around with Bub Bub and Buster Buster and just having a great time. Everybody's living their best life. It's just relaxation, slow life in the South, smooth Southern drawl, and unhurried strolling through the pines. It's great. It's a great life. We talk slow, we move slow, we have low anxiety. Not like those big city folks, right? And then you drive up and your child has been massacred. Your wife has been riddled with bullets. It's like Afghanistan on your pretty little plantation. So it only takes you how long to react? That's not reality. The reality is that first of all, you're stunned. There is a reaction of panic and incredulity. There is the most ultimate of denial that you can ever imagine, where he would be on his knees talking to Paul, shaking him, trying to wake him up. Equally dramatic, trying to hold Maggie and get her into a comfortable position. And all of these things are happening outside of rational thought. All you can think about is, I've got to wake them up. I have to wake them up. I know it sounds crazy, but that's the reality of how people react when their loved one has suddenly died. It doesn't even have to be bloody and murderous. There have been plenty of situations where people have awakened in the morning and their elderly spouse has passed away in the middle of the night, and they have the same exact reaction. The reaction is, wake them, shake them, talk to them, try to do CPR. It's what we do. The people that are closest to us, we have to be able to check in with them. We have to be able to get them to respond and talk to us. This timeline is way too tight. There is no accounting for the very real reactions of shock, denial, fear, panic. None of that is there, y'all. It's not there in the timeline, and it is damn sure not there in the 911 call. If you agree with me, put a 1. If you think that I'm way off base here, put a 2.
I left. I went back to the house.
All right. Well, before we do that, we've seen the dog kennel video with Cash and Mr. Davis, and we slowed it down for him. Do you see the water hose in that video on the ground? Do you remember seeing that?
Yes, I do.
Was the water hose out?
Obviously, in the video, but I don't specifically remember that, but I can look in that video and see it.
Right.
But that's not something that I noticed.
So, but you've seen it in the video here?
Yes, sir.
Right, okay. And then the 2 dogs were out?
Absolutely. Bubba and Grady.
Okay. And then you head back. How did you get back to the house?
The same route. I mean, the same route I'd come on. I came down the driveway, made a left on, you saw my route in the car. I drove that same route.
My question obviously wasn't clear enough. What, were you in a vehicle? You walked? What mode of transportation did you use to get back to the house?
Same way I came. I went back in the golf cart. And it was the golf cart, if you remember, that Mark Ball testified that he saw where we normally would park it. You pull up, pull along the front end.
Oh, you remember that credible guy that testified? Yeah, so he agrees with me. You need to try to remember that, right? Credibility. He's so manipulative.
Entrance, And either you'd come in from the left and you'd go just past it and be on the right, or you'd come in from the right and you'd be just past it on the left. And that's where I got in it, and that's where I put it back.
Did you do anything else?
Passive income only comes from real estate, right? That's what the people in the real estate business will tell you.
Open up a YouTube
and you
channel.
need hundreds.
Before leaving, after you took the chicken out of Bubba's mouth?
No.
We've heard about Bubba being stubborn. How long did it take you to get chicken out of Bubba's mouth?
Well, Bubba could be stubborn, but Bubba would listen to me. And another thing, when Bubba had on that collar, one of the other features of that collar was...
What did Bubba have on the collar, or was it Grady?
Bubba had on the collar.
Bubba had the collar.
I know Bubba had a collar on. And
Notice how forceful he is when he's telling the truth. None of the "aw shucks, ma'am." You know, just forceful. No, I know what I'm saying is right.
I'm not sure about Grady.
Okay, go ahead.
If I misspoke on that, there's no question about it. Bubba had on a collar. I assume Grady did too, but I didn't. I didn't. Even though I saw Grady, I didn't notice for a fact that Grady had on a collar.
Okay.
But he probably did.
So,
makes sense to me that he did.
How long did it take to get the chicken out of Bubba's mouth?
It didn't take long. Number one, Bubba's coming back there to show me, hey, I caught this chicken. So he's not running from me. He's proud of that fact that he caught this chicken. So, I mean, he comes right up to me. Bubba was really strong, but you know, you take your thumb when the dog's clenched and his mouth's a little bit open. All you do is you take your thumb and you push his gum in really tight against those sharp teeth, and his mouth opens right up. Took the chicken out and put it on, I believe, the portable dog kennel.
And then left.
And then I left.
Then leave. Okay. And did you go back to the house?
I went straight back to the house, to the air conditioner.
And
Yeah,
what did you
I
do
would
when you got
agree
back
with
to the house?
Tommy.
I lay
They're
down on
going
the
to have a
couch.
problem getting a
And then what?
conviction.
Well, was TV on when you went back?
Yeah, I mean, the TV never got cut off.
So you went back to the house, you lay down on the couch, and then what happened next?
I'm not positive I dozed off for a minute or didn't doze off for a minute, but I got up off of the couch and I made up my mind I was going to visit my mom.
Had you spoken to Barbara Mixon earlier in the day?
I did. I
And,
talked to Barbara most days. If I didn't see her, I talked to her.
and what was your understanding of your mother's condition late on the afternoon of the 7th?
She was agitated, which she got agitated.
I love these parallels, okay? Listen. So here we have Lick Lick, who is such a good guy, such an empathetic and warm soul, that he rescues the little chick from getting from the jaws of death of Bub, correct? So he's a good guy because he's, saving the chickens, right? Well, think about Barry Morphew. Remember the whole Barry had a dart gun. He had a dart gun, and that he didn't shoot Suzanne with the dart gun. He was shooting the chipmunks with the gun, because he was going to relocate the sleeping chipmunks to a new living environment, a different ecological area. This was actually a real conversation that I heard on Criminal Case Channel one night. They were trying to talk about the Barry Morphew case, but obviously they didn't really understand the case. They had only kind of listened partially. And they conflated, 95 chipmunks that Barry, because he's such a good man, he's such a warm soul, that he's sedating the 95 chipmunks so that he can gently place them in a box and carry them to another part of the mountain so that they won't be a nuisance on his property anymore. And that's just the kind of guy he was. That he was, he was accused of this terrible thing hurting Suzanne, but look how much he cared about the chipmunks. He sedated them so that he could take them, to a new living place and not harm them. Listen, when you're reaching that far that you got to make a hero out of a guy who saves chicken, there may be a problem, right?
When my dad, we were putting my dad in the hospital. He had a lot.
Exactly, Elizabeth.
Over the 18 months, 2 years. My dad was in the hospital. He was in the hospital a lot. And my mom, I believe my mom knew when my dad wasn't there.
Paul had a lot of nicknames, didn't he? Timmy the Terrible.
She would get agitated. That's just the only term you can think of. She'd get agitated. She'd cry a lot. She'd be fussy when she normally wouldn't be fussy. She was. I know Alzheimer's patients are unpredictable, but I'm convinced she knew because it happened frequently. And Barbara Ann told me, your mom's agitated. You need to check on her. I gave her medicine. She's resting. So it wasn't anything urgent.
Okay, so here's the storyline. All right. Thank you, Keister. Super Alec saves Cluckers from Bub and then goes to share his love in silence with his withering mother, who is lost without the ailing father, who enjoyed his last Krispy Kreme because of Mag and Super Alec. That's what they're going with, y'all. And I'm like Tommy, I think it's working.
But she's resting. So what Barbara would do, and Barbara could handle her better than, my mama. We all love Barbara. My mama loved Barbara. Barbara could get my mom to do things that nobody else.
Skinny Nona, there's something I didn't think about. Maybe mom had some pain pills and he was in full withdrawal at this point, right?
In order. And but Barbara had given her medicine and to settle her down and calm her down. And that would sometimes make her go to sleep for a little while. But then she'd be agitated when she woke up.
So did you go check on your mom?
I did.
Where did you park when you got there?
You saw the pictures?
So I saw somebody a while ago say something about why were they letting Alec talk so much. They needed, normally they restrict them to the question, right? No. This prosecution, they want this guy to talk. The more he talks, the more they have to cross-examine him on. They don't want to interrupt him a minute. Let him talk, let him ramble, let him tell his stories, because any story he now talks about, it now becomes wide open for the prosecution. So that's why they're not interrupting. That's why they're not trying to direct. They're letting him because that widens their playing field for impeaching him and catching him in, real lies and whatnot. What did I do? Hold on. Houston, we have a problem.
There's 2 exits off of that deck. One of them to the right, one of them straight out that back door. I would have parked to the left. If you're coming down these steps, if these are the steps, it would be to the left and back over there.
All right.
Which is where I always parked, or where we always parked, anytime you were going in that entrance.
All right, I'm going to stop there and ask.
Oh,
Doug,
and we
if you don't
can't
mind pulling up
forget
States
about him,
Exhibit
you know,
524, which is
enjoying
the
his sadistic,
GM
masochistic
data, and
sex.
slide
Right.
38, which is in evidence. Can you see this the slide with those dots?
Yes, sir.
Alec?
I can.
And the red dots here at the seem to be joined. Where is that in relation to your parents' house?
Where the arrow is?
Yes, sir.
All right, that's back in the area where I'm talking about. All right, so if you look in this picture, all right, you see the you see the open area with the green grass? That's the front door. Okay, yeah, right where that circle is. That's the front door. If you look closely at the house, you can see a big dormer right in the middle of the roof. That's right over the front door. The white thing to the left of the house, that's like a parking pad where the driveway ends. And there's a parking pad. So you go, if you follow the driveway all the way to the house, you're going to run straight into a carport. All right?
Okay. Very quickly, Tommy Larson has done a really good job talking about the failure to get a conviction. The failure to get a conviction is not the same thing as having been declared innocent. Having the charges dropped against you because the sanctions that have been placed on your case have been devastating because you can't seem to set your alarm and get up and get to court on time, that too is not a declaration of innocence. That's actually an indictment of your prosecutor in the Barry Morphew situation. But I think what is in play with Alec Murdaugh, two things. I think Tommy is right that they simply have not been able to give anything concrete by way of evidence. I mean, even their forensics related to the guns and the bullets and all that, even that didn't work. It was too fringe. No direct link, right? But I also think that Harpootlian is intimately aware of how many alternate jurors they have left. He talks about it a lot right now. So is this going to turn out to be that it's going to go to deliberations and this will be another Casey Anthony jury or O.J. Simpson jury where it's just not going to happen? It's not going to... I don't think he's going to get a not guilty. I think it would be a hung jury. Then they have to do another trial. And if he gets 2 hung juries, then he walks. Is that right? And, oh my God, Tommy, I talked about that. This is the O.J. Simpson problem 2.0, 2023. Let's just present the never-ending scientific discussion until your jurors' eyes glaze over and then hope for the best. That's what they... Here, and they didn't have to do that, Tommy. They had some really interesting testimony. They had some pretty dramatic kind of, high drama witnesses that could have held the attention of the jurors. They ruined that. They ruined it with all of this trying to make these kind of statistical inferences. And let's be honest, the majority of the population cannot connect with statistical inferences. They don't care. They care about what they can see, what they can touch, what they can hear. So, yeah, I'm with Tommy on this. I think the jury has glazed over, number one. I don't think they're remembering most of the testimony that's happened over the last 4 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it's been. And there's no direct evidence to fall back on. And now, much to the surprise of the prosecution, this guy's on the stand. And he is very high in interpersonal intelligence. He is manipulating them. He is telling a story that he wants them to think about who he is. But the most skeptical guy in the room is Prince Buster. Buster ain't buying it. I don't know if you guys noticed that or not. And that's where my next video will be. Because we are now firmly in the morning hours of Wild Speculation Friday. And so I will be back. I have to work this morning. But then we're going to finish this. But more importantly, I'm going to highlight Buster. Because Buster does not look, like he's convinced by what his dad is saying. And I think that is incredibly interesting.